Welcome to the online version of the Healthy Heart Support Group for people with heart failure. My name is Sarah Lee Thomas. I have a master's degree in nutrition. I'm a registered dietitian with about 20 years experience, and this was recorded in July of 2011. So why eat less sodium? Well, first, it can help you feel a lot better. It can result in less fluid buildup. It can make your medications work better. If you have taking medications for your heart and your blood pressure, but you have a lot of sodium in your diet, the medications can't work as well. So the medications in your diet need to work together. So if you eat less sodium, your medications will actually do their job better. So it helps them out. And also, you may actually need less medication when you eat less sodium. So some of your medications may even be cut down. And also, when you eat less sodium, it does help lower your blood pressure. And that's important because blood pressure, when blood pressure is high, it puts extra work on the heart. So blood pressure. We all go to the doctor every time we get our blood pressure checked. But what does those numbers mean anyway? Well, we know we get these two numbers. They give us the first number is actually records the pressure while your heart beats. So kaboom, pushing the blood out into the body. And then your heart relaxes between beats so it can fill up with more blood. And that is the second number. So that's why you have two numbers. So the first number, kaboom, second number, relax. It's like the top and bottom of a wave in the ocean. And so what's the significance? Why is this important? Well, as I said before, the heart works harder when the blood pressure is high. So if you lower your blood pressure, it helps the heart. So the heart has less work to do. You don't get as tired. And so what numbers should you be looking for? Well, we know for sure, for everybody pretty much, if it's over 140 or 90, it's high. And that's high whether either or both numbers are high. So let's say your bottom number is okay, but your top number is high, that's still not good. And vice versa. If the top number is okay, but the bottom number is high. You don't want either number to be high. What is normal or best? Below 120/80 is considered normal. Your doctor may set an individual goal for you based on other things that are going on with you, maybe kidney disease, may even set the target lower, or diabetes may be somewhere in between. So make sure that you find out what your specific target is for your blood pressure. It's important. Where do we get sodium? Sodium is the part of salt that raises blood pressure. And a lot of people say, well, I don't add any salt when I cook. I don't add any salt when I eat. And those are good things. I'm not saying they're not, but that only amounts to about 11% of the sodium that we actually take in our food every day. And then there's a tiny bit, about an equal amount, about 12%, that's naturally in the food, naturally present in the meat or in the plants or grains. But as you can see, the largest section is that 77% that's come from processed and prepared foods. So if you want to make a difference in how much sodium you get, how much fluid you collect, and how much extra weight is putting work on your heart, then you need to pay attention to labels. Because if it's a processed or prepared food, you're in luck because they all have labels. So why would processed or prepared foods have more sodium? Well, you can see a lot gets added. So if you have green beans that are fresh or frozen, half a cup, about the size of a light bulb, that's about the amount to imagine, that has no sodium, 0% of your daily value. That's what DV stands for. So no sodium, none at all. You say that same half a cup, and it now has been canned, that involves adding sodium, so now you have 170 milligrams, which is 7% of your daily value. That's not outrageously high or anything, but it's certainly a lot more than zero. Now, meat, you can have a huge difference based on whether it's processed or fresh. The fresh pork loin, 3.5 ounces, a little bit bigger than a deck of cards, so imagine that. That has only 51 milligrams of sodium, which is a measly 2% of your daily limit, your daily value. You take that same piece of pork and you now process it into ham, so processed meat now, same size, 3.5 ounces, and now has 1,255 milligrams of sodium. That is half your limit for the day, 52%. So just from going from fresh to processed, you go from 2% to 52%. So watching those processed and prepared foods can really help you out in avoiding excess sodium. What is the recommended daily sodium intake? Well, there are several recommendations out there, and your doctor may set an individual recommendation for you. But for most adults, the daily limit is around 2,300, 2,400 milligrams per day. You could also say that as 2.3 grams. It's the same amount, it's just in different units. It's just like saying I have 6 and you have half a dozen. It's the same amount, it's just a different way to measure it. So 2,300 milligrams is the same as saying 2.3 grams. So this is a safe upper limit. It's the amount of sodium that would be in 1 teaspoon of salt if we pulled it out of all the food so we could just see it in one little pile. And this is about 100% of the daily value that you'd find on the label. So if all the foods you ate during the day, you added them all up, and it all added up to 10% here and 20% there, and all through the day added up to 100%, you'd be getting 2,400 milligrams. So that'd be just about right. 2 grams sodium diet, or 2,000 milligrams, again, this means the same thing. So 2,000 milligrams total per day. This is the most common recommendations for people with heart failure by most doctors. And so if you were adding up all the little sodium bits that you got in your food through the day, and you added them all up to 83% to be exact, you would be getting 2 grams of sodium, or 2,000 milligrams. So again, these are just different ways to measure the same thing. If you say 2,000 milligrams, that's the same as saying 2 grams, and it's also the same as saying 83% daily value. Now, they've also introduced more recently an even more strict sodium limit, which is 1.5 grams, or we could say 1,500 milligrams. So 1,500 milligrams is the same as 1.5 grams, and that's your total per day. And this is recommended by the Institute of Medicine, and this is equal to about 60% of the daily value if you added those up from all your labels. So again, this would be, the same 1.5 grams of sodium, or 1,500 milligrams, or about 60% daily value for the total for the day. So these are the total for the day recommended daily intakes. But salt tastes good! So just face it. We have to face it. Cutting down on sodium can be really hard. But there is good news. If you stick with it for at least 2 months, right around 2 to 4 months, your taste buds actually adjust, and low sodium food will start tasting better, and the high sodium foods that you used to like will start tasting too salty. And this does happen. I had a patient kind of look at me like, I don't believe you. But when they came back, they said, boy, you were right. I thought I was craving a French fry, and I had one. I ordered some, and I just ate one. It was like, ew, this tastes terrible. And I even asked them, did they change the recipe? And they said no. So it had been the person's actual taste buds had adjusted, and the food that they used to find just fine was now so salty they didn't even finish. So you have to be kind of tough it out and stick with it, and it does get easier. You can also use a lot of herbs and spices, vinegar, and lemon juice to flavor foods instead of salt. And also adding just a little bit of oil, a little bit of sweetener, maybe Splenda or something. Those can all help enhance taste without adding any sodium at all. There's lots of options. Now we're going to talk about the health claims you'll see in big or small letters spread across packages. Sodium free, very low sodium, low sodium. And can you believe it? Well, some you can, and some you need to have a little bit of skepticism. These are legally defined regulations that determine, if it says sodium free, this is what it means. Less than 5 milligrams of sodium per serving. So there's a definition. It's legally defined. So you can believe it. If it says sodium free, it's sodium free. Very low sodium means that it's 35 milligrams or less per serving. So that has a definite definition. If you see that, you can believe it, and you don't even have to look at the label. You know it's very low sodium. Low sodium also has a legal definition. So if you see that, that's a good choice. So these 3 phrases you can actually believe. If you see these on the label, sodium free, very low sodium, or low sodium, yeah, those are great choices. They are low in sodium. But there are some claims that while they are legally defined, there can be misleading, and you need to double check by looking at the label versus just the claim. If it says reduced sodium, that just means it's lower than it was before. It could have been sky high, and now it's only a little bit high. Or it's now only as high as the skyscraper instead of as high as the sky. So it still can be extremely high, even though it says reduced sodium. So it just takes the usual sodium level and reduces it by at least 25%. So this is important to remember. Just because it says reduced sodium does not mean low sodium. It could still be very high in sodium, just not as high as it was before. Now unsalted. Unsalted just means no salt was added, or it was made without added salt. But whatever was in there to start with is in there. So unsalted or no salt added, it's a good thing to, oh, that's a good thing, let me look at it. But you do need to turn it around, look at the back, and see what the label actually says, how much total sodium is in there. So these, while they do have legal, defined meanings, they can be misleading. So if you see these, double check. Okay, let's get started with label reading. This is a label for mac and cheese, and we're going to come back to this. But you'll notice on all labels, you start at the top with the words nutrition facts, and then you can see the serving size and other information. And we're going to be learning a lot more about this number on here called percent daily value that's listed down the right side. So let's get started and understanding how this can help us out. So label reading. You want to look at the serving size first. And this is very important because all those numbers on the label we saw, they tell you the amount per serving, not per package. So when you look at those numbers on the label, they only apply to one serving. And that becomes very important. If you think it's the whole package, you could actually be ending up with 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times more than you think you do. And then the percent daily value, it's kind of a confusing thing until you have it explained, and then it can become enormously valuable. The percent daily value tells you the answer to your basic question. Is this a little or is this a lot? And it's a real easy rule of thumb to learn. 5, 10, 20. 5% daily value or less per serving is low in a nutrient, whether it's a good nutrient or a bad nutrient. So 5% is low. 10% is medium. So 10 to 19%, right around there, is medium. 20% or more is high. And this is, again, regardless of whether it's a so-called good nutrient or a so-called bad nutrient. If it's 20% or more, it's high. If it's 20% fiber, that's high in fiber. If it's 20% sodium, that's high in sodium. So, and then of course with sodium, you want to remember your overall limit for the day, which is, for most people, is around 80% daily value for the day. And some people have to keep it down even to 60%. So let's go ahead and take a look at the label in more detail. To get started on reading the label, you always want to start with the serving size, and this is always at the top right under the words nutrition facts. So in this case, our mac and cheese, the serving size is 1 cup. The second thing to look at is the servings per container. As you can see in this case, it's 2. And this is important because this tells you that there's more than 1 serving per container, so if you eat the whole container, you're getting a lot more. In this case, you get double. So if you have 1 serving, you have 250 calories, but if you eat them 2, it'd be 500, because 250 plus 250 is 500. So pay attention to this number as well. This next is many people overlook this, but is a key phrase. Amount per serving. What that means is all of the rest of the numbers on the label are the amount per serving. In this case, 1 cup, not the whole container. So, if you are looking at your sodium, you say sodium, there it is, 470 milligrams, right there in the middle. That's 20% of my daily value. That's the amount that is in 1 cup. So 1 cup of macaroni and cheese has 470 milligrams. Where did this number come from? Well, daily values are established for all the major nutrients, and they just do the math for you on the label. So you don't see this, but what's going on in the background is they take that 470 milligrams that's in 1 cup of mac and cheese and they divide it by the limit for the day. So the average person shouldn't have more than 2,400 milligrams of sodium for the day. So we do the math, or they do the math for us, and that's where we get the 20% daily value. So what does that mean? So you look at the serving size, and you know that those numbers are per serving, not per package. And then when you see that 20%, what does it mean? 5, 10, 20 is the thing to remember. It makes it really easy, and it just instantly makes sense of the foods labels that you look at. So if you see something that's 5% or low, if you see something that's 5% or less, that's considered low, whatever the nutrient is, good or bad or ugly. If it's 10% or more, that's medium or a good source. So 10 to 19%, right in that range, that's a medium source. Once it gets up to 20% or more per serving, that is considered high. So, and then also for sodium, you want to remember your overall limit for the day. So if you're sticking to, most people's budget is around 83% daily value total for the day if you have heart failure. If you're given the most strict one, then that would just be 60% total for the day. So, you can see even a medium food could add up pretty fast, because 6 to 8 foods with a 10% daily value would be up to your limit for the day. So when you look out there, what foods will you find that are high in sodium? Here are some notable examples. Soy sauce. Soy sauce is extremely high. Even if you buy the light soy sauce, I tell you, look at the label, it's still pretty high. Canned soups, oh, they can be outrageously high. Just grab a can of soup and take a look at the numbers and maybe sit down first, because it can really surprise you how high they are. Frozen meals are often quite high in sodium. Careful with those. Hot dogs. Those are quite a bit loaded. They're actually loaded with salt and nitrates and saturated fat, so pretty much not a good choice all around. Maybe once a year at the fairground. Pepperoni, also processed meat, very high in sodium. Ham and deli meat, extremely high. And most fast food. Pretty much you have to figure if you eat out, you're getting 50% daily value easy, if not more. Canned vegetables, a little bit higher. If you drain and rinse them, you get rid of about 40% of the sodium, so that can be good. When they're on sale, buy them canned, but just drain off the water, the juice around it. Vegetable juice can be high sodium, although they do have lower sodium choices now. So it's getting better. There's actually more low sodium choices out there. And then any food that says 20% daily value or more per serving is a high sodium food. Again, remember, the daily value, 5% or less is low, 10% is medium, 20% or more is high. Plus, this is a sneaky one, antacid tablets. If they're made from sodium bicarbonate, they have 500 milligrams of sodium per tablet. So if you pop a couple of those, there you are, 40% of your daily value blown just on your antacids. So pay attention to that. That can be a sneaky source of excess sodium. What are some foods naturally low in sodium? Because sometimes you start feeling like, well, what is there to eat then? Well, fresh fruits and vegetables, they're extremely low. Even the, quote, highest sodium vegetable barely reaches 5%. And remember, 5% or less is still low sodium. So all your fresh fruits and vegetables, also frozen, are very excellent choices as well. Those are pretty great choices. You don't have to worry about them. In fact, they even did a study where people had like kind of a normal high sodium level, but they ate lots of fruits, vegetables, healthy fish, chicken, nuts, seeds, beans, got enough milk, and they actually lowered their blood pressure even though they didn't lower their sodium. The sodium was kept exactly the same, but they just ate more of the healthy foods, and they found that lowered their blood pressure as much as taking a medicine, and did it quickly within 2 weeks of starting to, again, they didn't cut down on their sodium in this study, but they just ate more of the healthy foods, and their blood pressure dropped just as much as people who took a medicine, and in 2 weeks. So canned fruits and frozen vegetables, dried beans, peas, rice, most pasta and noodles. But I do caution you to check the label on pasta and noodles. There are some that have a lot of sodium in them. Your standard old spaghetti noodles are usually fine. It's just especially like the Asian noodles, they can be really high. So always check the label. And that's my rule of thumb to leave you with is if it has a label, read it. I mean it. Here's a handy guide to how you put everything together. So, okay, you're reading the labels, so the food you're bringing home is lower in sodium, but how do you turn that into, a plate of food? How do you turn that into something practical? Well, this is called the plate method. Various people have adapted ones, but I think Idaho plate method was one of the first people who they put something together. So basically, imagine a one of those picnic plates, has the three compartments. Well, the big section should be like your vegetables, and then one small section for your bread or starch, your rice, your noodles, potatoes, and then another small section for your meat, and then add a fruit and add a milk or yogurt. And by doing that, you get the fruit, vegetables, milk, or yogurt, which kind of help counterbalance the sodium. They actually help your body get rid of extra sodium. And you're not overdoing it on the meat and getting too much cholesterol, saturated fat. And the bread and starch, you're getting enough, but you're not like overdoing it so you don't have too many calories from there. So this is a really easy, practical way to just kind of have a general picture in your mind of what should it look like, a healthy meal when I sit down to dinner. So why do you want to eat less sodium? Why go to all this effort? You will feel better. You'll have less fluid buildup on your body, in your legs, your lungs, your stomach region, and your medications can work better, and you may even need less medication. And it can also help lower your blood pressure. So all good reasons to go to the extra effort to read the labels and figure out where you're getting too much sodium from.